What is going on, guys? Honestsense here, and today we are going to take a look at the direction that the gaming industry is going in. And based on what we've seen in the past 10 years, we can make a lot of predictions on where gaming is going from the side of developers all the way to what gamers prefer in gaming in recent years. So without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's dive in to find out where the gaming industry is going in the years to come. So, to find out where we're going, we must analyze where we've gone so far, and we'll look as far back as the mid-1980s, back when console gaming started to bustle with systems like the Famicom debuting in Japan in 1983 and being rebranded and released in the US in 1985 as the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES. This was the start of mainstream gaming being available to players in their own home in a huge way, selling millions of units worldwide, which was generally unheard of at that time. Massive releases at that time that would go on to influence the direction of gaming in general included titles such as Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, Tetris, and Mega Man. And you've likely heard of most, if not all of these IPs, unless you live with Patrick Star. These games would go on to influence and define what gaming at home could be like, and this was revolutionary at the time. It was an exciting time to be a gamer, or so I've heard. Going into the 1990s, and we see further innovation and even more people wanting to get into creating and playing games. We see the release of the Super Nintendo in 1990 as a direct successor to the NES, followed by the Nintendo 64 in 1996, which featured some heavyweight titles that are still adored by fans today, like GoldenEye, 007, Star Fox, and Mario Kart. It's also worth mentioning that we saw the rise in popularity of the handheld console with the Game Boy and Game Boy Color later on. In the later 90s, Pokemon became an instant hit among fans, and although Game Freak never actually had solidified plans to continue making Pokemon after the first games, the rapid growth and popularity of the series resulted in the company continuing to make new iterations of this IP through current day, and although the series has seen a steep fall off in interest in recent years due to out-of-touch game design and decision-making, it still carved its way to becoming one of the most popular IPs on Earth to this day. The 90s were a great time for gaming, as people who really understood what gamers wanted were the ones making these games. 9 out of 10 times, these games were being created by people as nerdy as the players because they were also players of other games. They played games before the games they made, and they got inspiration and wanted to create something themselves. It's also worth noting that at this time, Blizzard North was making their hard-hitting debut with Warcraft 1 in 1994, Warcraft 2 Tides of Darkness in 1995, and Diablo 1 and 2 in 1998 and 2000, respectively.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah,
These games would also go on to be revered by fans for decades to come, and gaming was seeing a huge boom of banger after banger at this time. The PlayStation 1 also released in 1994 and saw some massive titles enter the scene with games like Crash Bandicoot, Resident Evil, and massively revered Final Fantasy VII, which has been considered by many to be one of the best Final Fantasy entries in the series. I'm sure a lot of you guys know what I'm talking about with that. This was the golden age of gaming, and although I only experienced the tail end of this era and played many of these games long after their release, there was so much love built into these games, and hearing older people in school talk about the good old days with some of these games truly made me feel like I had just missed an amazing era of gaming. In the early 2000s, we saw things as business as usual at the start. The Xbox and PlayStation 2 released in 2001 and 2000 respectively, and amazing games were constantly released for both these consoles, such as Metal Gear Solid, Halo 1 and 2, Grand Theft Auto, and Fable's debut, as well as Final Fantasy X, which is another revered entry in the series. This was a time when gaming studios were still in touch with what their fans wanted, and it seemed like they couldn't fail to deliver something that was amazing 9 out of 10 times. Back in the day, your game had to be complete because if it shipped as a buggy mess, there was no easy way to send out patches and fixes. It had to be finished. Unless you exclusively were to release on PC, sending out patches to players was damn near impossible in most cases and was just seen as inefficient and not consumer friendly. Still, at this time, it felt like games were being made by developers who knew what gamers wanted, and this was also an amazing and exciting time to be a gamer. Handheld consoles continued to evolve with the Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, and games like Pokemon continued to see a rise in popularity, with Game Freak continuing to hit their mark with most of their titles. We saw Nintendo lose its unofficial monopoly on the market as the Xbox and PlayStation grew massively and made a name for themselves. But this made for healthy competition at the time, and by association, each company was trying their absolute best to lock in with game studios that were pumping out great games. So around the 2010 mark, we saw an amazing jump in graphical fidelity versus the previous 15 years, as well as some heavy hitters like Call of Duty, Battlefield, Final Fantasy, Halo, and many more, redefining just how good a game could look and play, and how this could tell a much more convincing story and narrative. We also saw the massive rise in popularity of the MMO genre, with EverQuest first in 1999 into World of Warcraft's debut in 2004, which continued to rise in popularity for many years through 2009 and 2010. This was an amazing time to be a gamer, and one of the first times where gaming really took over my life, as I had just hit middle school and was mesmerized by the technology and the graphics and the stories that could be told in each game. And despite companies starting to realize what a cash cow the gaming industry was and starting to pivot toward profit more than playability, we still saw some great games releasing at this time. But it was apparent that something was changing. No longer were games being made by a group of nerdy developers who wanted to make a cool game because they liked playing D&D. The gaming industry was in full swing, and we saw many companies like Activision and EA become massive conglomerates with one mission: to pump out the next best thing and make it stick. And this sounds great on paper, but in practice, what ended up happening is you end up with a board of executives making all the calls for what direction their studios should go, and based on past successes without actually understanding the essence of what made these games great and what made players flock to them. This was the beginning of the end. We start to see more and more flops or buggy messes coming out. Games like the original release of Final Fantasy XIV in 2010 were an unenjoyable mess trying to capitalize on the success of their earlier MMO Final Fantasy XI in 2002. They failed to innovate properly and eventually scrapped the whole thing after release and rebuilt the MMO from the ground up, which, credit where credit is due, this part's not even scripted. Most companies would have just thrown it in the garbage and called it a day. Huge props to Square for just taking the game down and remaking it. It's awesome. I love Final Fantasy XIV, so I just wanted to throw that in. We see Anthem in 2019, which was a highly anticipated game at the time, and it received massive criticism for lack of content and repetitive gameplay. We see World of Warcraft saw a continuing downward spike after 2010 and after Activision's acquisition, oh my god, that's hard to say, of Blizzard Entertainment, with players citing the introduction of the in-game store, repetitive storylines and gameplay mechanics, and the game itself becoming too difficult to ease into after so many years of content. And obviously that's all just scratching the surface. I'm sure you guys have some games from 2010 to 2020 that you know that came out and just massively failed. It was becoming a much more regular thing at this time. There are countless more games that came out from 2015 onward that just continued to miss their mark by a large margin. This was a massive change of pace in gaming. Games used to be awesome almost every single time, but with the introduction of ease of access to sending out patches, out-of-touch executives, and the corporate takeover of gaming companies, they could not seem to figure out how to make games that people enjoyed, and in many cases, even releasing a game that felt incomplete. Even with graphics and fidelity reaching a new high, players found that games left them feeling unsatisfied more and more, and I felt this heavily too as I went through high school and into my early adult years. So, now that we've talked about the past in gaming, let's now talk about the present and the future. And the good news is that there is actually good news. I know, that's weird. The last few years, we've seen something amazing happening, and I've talked about this with a lot of my friends over the past few years, actually. What we're seeing now is games becoming easier and easier to make and develop, and what this is doing is allowing smaller and smaller groups of people to create the games that they would want to play. We're starting to see gamers making games again, not responsible to some executive board and just making the games they want to, and games that many want to play. Some titles in the last couple years include the massive release of Palworld, Schedule 1, Hollow Knight, Helldivers 2, and most recently, you guys know I'm going to drop it, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. All of these games were made with much smaller teams, and they hit their marks in a big way. All these games see massive hype and popularity around them, and there are many more that have come out recently, but you get the point. All of this being said, the future of gaming looks bright, and seeing that the continuing ease of development is putting game development back into the hands of the gamers like it was in the early days is a great sign. I'm super excited to see what games we get in the coming years, as the last few years have shown us that small dev teams of nerdy gamers are more than capable of making bangers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite games were from these eras. I didn't get as in-depth as I would have liked to with each era, as this is my first longer form video, and I didn't want to turn it into a 40-minute video until I get some more experience editing this type of content, excuse me. There was a lot more I wanted to add in. I kind of just did a quick summary in the history, but I wanted to put this out and see what you guys think. Do you guys think the future of gaming is bright? I really do, considering people are having much more tools to be able to make the games they want to make, and you see smaller and smaller teams just pumping out absolute heat. It is so good to see. I'm excited for it. I'm excited. I really feel like we're turning a new page, turning a new leaf, whatever the kids say. That all being said, thank you guys for watching. Like I said, my name is Honestsense. If you like what you see, drop a like and subscribe, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.